why we tend to focus on fear so much and how to break it. We're going to look at getting comfortable with the concept of fear, turning your fear into a way of knowing what matters, understanding the 4 steps to get past your fears, how to overcome the 3 types of fears, and then the importance of being a little bit curious in life as well. Definitely helps when you're part of a business. This is brought to you by Workforce Australia and their self-employment services delivered in Darwin by Business Station. That's where I'm sitting right now. So first of all, a little bit about me. I'm an entrepreneurship facilitator working with Business Station here in Darwin and Northern Territory, helping out with Workforce Australia's self-employment services, also with my own business, ClickStarter, which is a digital marketing agency. I work with Meta as a lead trainer, with Google's Digital Springboard project, and LinkedIn Local is one of my projects here in Darwin. We do a number of LinkedIn themed networking events every month, and my own training and coaching through DanteStJames.com. So you get more of what it is you focus on. And I want to really show you what I mean by that, by saying that it's kind of like this, right? That's how you buy a red car or a blue car, a yellow car, or any car that's not white, basically, that you see those cars everywhere, or you buy a particular model of car, and all you see is that model of car absolutely everywhere. Well, there's a name for that, and it's called the Bader-Meinhof phenomenon, or otherwise called the frequency illusion. It's that idea that when you focus on something, you're going to see more of it. You're going to notice more of it. Things that are around that, you're going to notice a lot more as well. And this is why we often think that this, because we're focused on this thing at this time, that so will the rest of the world be as well. From a young age, we're taught to avoid danger and avoid risk in order to keep us safe and help us to fit in, because fitting in means that there's not any problems. You're not going to have a lot of bullying. You're not going to have issues in your life if you just fit in. The problem with that is when you start a business, you kind of got to go the opposite. You are risk intensive. We are taught to face down dangers, and fitting in is often what is death to a business. If you're too much like every other business in the world, then you're not going to be able to have any sort of, success or any chance of success, because you are just like every single other person. Some fears are self-taught, self-supported, and completely under our control, though. I'm not talking about real clinical phobias. I'm not talking about the fear of abuse and things like that. I'm talking about some of the fears that we have that we've kind of put in our own way, that we've put in our own world, and that we've had in a way that's like, in a way that we don't really want that fear to go away. We think that fear is protecting us. We are comfortable with that fear. Yet what we find is that fear is not helping us at all. We think it is, but it's holding us back, particularly in business. Around 70% of subconscious thought is focused on what we don't want to have happen in our lives. 70% of what's going on in the back of our mind is on avoiding failure, avoiding hurt, avoiding pain, all of those kind of things. We can do so much better than that. I think we could anyway. Then if we look at, while this happens, the brain releases control of those things. It is at the end of creativity and resourcefulness when we pop into that whole, what we call the reptilian brain, that kind of thing. That's when we go, yeah, everything switches off, logic switches off, creativity switches off, and the ability for us to choose things that are better for us tends to switch off, because the brain releases that cortisol. Cortisol is a stress substance. It goes through our body and prepares us to handle stressful occasions, the fight, the flight, the run away, all those things. That's what happens when we get the cortisol point. Now, getting comfortable with fear does sound like it's difficult. You think, well, I've got a fear of public speaking, so how am I ever going to get comfortable with that? There's sort of a process you can go through with that, and we're not going to labor too heavily on processes today. This is just a thinking point, an idea for you to think about. The will I die test is what I started to do once I went through a course called Landmark Education, and it was a chance for me to sort of push past some barriers that I thought I had, and to pass through to a new paradigm where I was able to do things I didn't think I was able to. And one of the tests that I learned from there is the will I die test. So it asks that question. If I speak in public, if I lose all my money, if I try this new way to work, if I leave my job, if my partner leaves me, will I die? And the answer to those questions is no, of course you won't. Speaking in public will not kill you. Losing all your money will not kill you. Finding a new way to work at things will not kill you. Studying a new subject will not kill you. These things don't kill you on their own, but your fear of those things can lead to unintended and very negative consequences as well. So then we ask, as a business owner, we have to be in some way a little bit of a risk taker. Because ultimately, the success or failure of this business we're forming is all up to us. Nobody else is going to make this happen. The government won't make this happen. Your mother won't make this happen. Your brother who invested with you won't make this happen. This is all 100% up to you. And you get to a point where the business is at risk because you know that if you don't change, the business can't grow and can't survive. You can't support yourself. And without those changes, then it's a question that you go, how far do you have to go with these fears until it hurts so much that you have no choice but to change or to face down those fears? So if you don't change, you won't grow. No one else is going to make this happen for you. And then there's this little thing to get comfortable with as a business owner. The idea that failure is part of the deal. You will fail in some way, at some point, at some time, perhaps many, many times. I know I have many, many stories of failure I can tell you right now. Right from my first business, which went down in flames of over $150,000 worth of losses, caused me to go bankrupt. All those things happened. Now, since then, I've had successful businesses that I certainly learned my mistakes from those early failures. But failure is part of the business. Now, it may not be necessarily that it's failure that takes down everything and causes you to go bankrupt. In most cases, it won't be that. The failure will just be that you'll launch a product and it won't take. You'll do a discount, do a sale, and no one buys. You approach someone for a really big deal that you're very confident on and they don't select you. That's just all part of business. It's part of competition. It's about selling yourself, all those things. You're not going to sell yourself to every single person you come across. Fear isn't necessarily a bad thing in itself. It's there for a reason. But unharnessed fear, the fear that you have no control of, that runs completely roughshod over your life, that is the enemy of business. That's the enemy of what you're doing. So think about this. When you're 90, are you going to regret something you did or tried? Or are you most likely to regret the things you didn't get a chance to do? Maybe it's the chances you didn't take, the opportunities you just walked away from because it just seemed a little bit too hard. Will you regret those, or will you regret the things you actually did do? If they're bad things, yeah, you might regret it. Those words in anger that you said to someone you loved that you never got to see again. Yeah, I probably would. I probably regret that a little bit. But trying out a new business, trying out a new feature, trying out a new education, trying out a new relationship, I'm not going to regret those. No way. Because they're all part of what teaches us to be who we are, teaches us to be the business person that we happen to be. Now, there's a way around some of this. If that fear is too big, too hard, too great, too broad, too much to think of getting over right now, what we do is write the idea down. If it's a new business, if it's a new study you want to do, if it's a new line of business or a new product you want to sell in your business, but you don't have the guts to do it quite yet, it's okay. It doesn't mean that the idea is bad. It just means that right at this very point at this time, it may not be the right time for it. It may not be the time for you to start something new today. That doesn't mean it's not the right time to do something new ever. It's just not quite the time today. So what we do, we take that idea, we write it down, we put it somewhere where our ideas go. A sticky note on the kitchen fridge. It could be on the whiteboard. It could be on a piece of paper that you attach to your monitor. Anything like that. Don't let the idea go. Write it down. Because while this may not be the right time to be acting upon it, we don't know that next week or next month or something like that might be the time when that idea is right. It's in its season. It's ready to be picked up and acted upon. We find that with small business all the time. Not every idea is a good idea. investing in more seating in a restaurant to expand the dining room of your restaurant in January 2020 was probably not the right time to do that, given the global pandemic was about to come and take over our lives. But investing in online sales and delivery scooters and things like that may have been a great time for that. It may not have been the right time for in 2019 because we didn't know what was coming. But by then, we would have known that there were some things we could have done. It might have been fearful. Oh, will this delivery thing take off? It looks like it is. Well, of course, we're not to know that. But if the fear is too great to act on right now, write that idea down. Even do it right now. Write down the idea. Just scribble it down on the piece of paper, put it on your desk, put it somewhere where you're going to come across it, where you'll be reminded of it. I've got a mirror in my bathroom that I write little things on, the ideas. I get shower thoughts. Having a shower, I get an idea. So I've got a whiteboard marker that I write on the mirror just to go, oh, here's the idea, quick, write it down. Because I know I'm not going to walk out of that shower to act on that idea because it's just too much at the time. And as you start to move towards little steps of changing something or doing something different, you find that your courageousness grows. You get more courage. But the only way to do that is to do more things that scare you. So what it might mean, drive a different way to work. It doesn't have to be invest $100,000 into this idea. Make it little things that you learn to become more risk, to embrace risk and embrace the idea of failure by doing more things that give you a little bit of a fright. Change the flavor of the milkshake that you're going to have on Friday night. Eat something different that you may not like for dinner on Thursday night. Go to a very different place for lunch on Monday. And just little things like that. Walk a different direction in your evening walk, or try a different exercise in the gym that you haven't otherwise done before. All those little things, they build that little risk muscle that's in you. So as you do something small that's different, then you'll gradually do something a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger, and you'll lift more and you'll do more and you'll act more, you'll do more and achieve more. But you have to start with something small. If you're not someone who takes giant leaps of faith, like I often do, then you have to start with small things like wearing a different pair of shoes to work, doing something different, buying a pair of glasses that you think may not suit you, but other people tell you do. That's a huge pain thing because you know that you're not going to get another pair of glasses for a year. Do that small thing. That small thing that's a very small, low risk thing, but still has a little bit of risk associated with it. And then keep doing those things. Do something. There's that sunscreen song from back in the Romeo and Juliet movie era with Leonardo DiCaprio and Claire Danes in it. And there's that sunscreen song, which was released by Baz Luhrmann and his recording company at the time, was talking about doing something each day that scares you. It's called Not the Sunscreen Song, I think it was called. That's the parody. It's the sunscreen song anyway. And the idea was to do something each day that scares you. I say probably try something each month that scares you. Don't start off with giving yourself too much to think about and change and do, because too much fear will overwhelm you. Too much change will overwhelm you. Too many different things that are popping up in front of you will overwhelm you. So just small steps. Change the color of the pen you write with from black to blue. You never know what might happen. No, it's just little small steps. A life that isn't limited by fear is a life that is far more engaging. We know that if we just sit in the same place, doing the same things we do, with the same people we always see, the same outlook, the same seat in a restaurant, the same seat on the train. Yeah, people do that. In other states, people do that all the time. They literally go into the same carriage in the same seat on their train every day. And when someone else just would dare to be sitting in that seat instead of them, it really messes with their heads. As an ex-commuter from the 1990s in Sydney, I was in an outer Sydney station going to another outer Sydney station. And it was just so funny to notice that I always sat in the same car, in the same seat, facing the same way every time. Every time it was the same thing. And I hated my life back then. I was depressed. I was anxious all the time. Couldn't change anything. These days, what I'll do in a restaurant, I'll say, oh, I've been here enough already. Let's go somewhere new. I'm at that point now where I'm willing to take a few more risks on little things like restaurants, seating, directions, places to go and stay. When I go to Bali, I never want to stay in the same place more than once. I've done it this once because I had such a good experience at that particular place. But next time I want to go to somewhere different. I want to stay in a different hotel in a different part of Bali because I want to be more engaged in my life. Like I said earlier, fear itself is not a bad thing. In fact, fear is a sign that what you're about to go through matters. It has meaning. It's got something very real and tangible about it that means that this is something that actually bears time thinking about, considering, stopping and actually having a thought moment to go, I'm not just going to jump in this. I really need to consider that. That kind of fear is great because it lets you think things through. I'm not talking about jumping off, sides of cliffs just to see what happens. I'm talking about taking calculated risks when it comes to business. Fear is basically just data. It's information. So we know that when fear shows up, it means that you give a damn about something. We know that fear can be a legitimate reminder of danger. You get fear of leaning too far over a lookout's railing at a particularly dangerous cliff beside the ocean. Well, that fear, that vertigo you get is a legitimate reminder of danger. So there is very real fear. Fear is real. Sometimes it means you care about losing something. Sometimes it is a reminder of danger, but sometimes fear can also be a reminder of past issues you went through. It's not a reminder of anything real. It's not that you care about it. It's not necessarily that you feel there's a real and present danger. It could just be because you've got this thing in your head which automatically goes, when I go to pick up a delivery from the post office and a different person is there, I automatically think that something's going to go wrong. We associate change with danger. We associate something new with danger. The idea of trying something different, we associate with danger. And that's just built into us. That's natural for human beings because we're in a modern age in a very complex world dealing with complex solutions and complex issues, but we've still got the same hardware that we were given back in the Neolithic times as stone people living in caves, hunting for woolly mammoth and hunting and gathering bears and herbs in the forests. That Paleolithic period, we're still at the same hardware. Our brain hasn't changed since then. It's the same brain, the same physiology with the same people, probably a bit fatter these days, but we're basically the same human beings, but we're dealing now with infinitely more things. So fear, the fear of the saber-toothed tiger in the bush, the fear of seeing people who might be from another tribe and thinking that they're going to kill us, that fear is all very real for the Paleolithic time. But that fear that's built into us now, we need to, as more complex human beings with much more smarts and much more infinitely more intricate ways of walking through our lives, realize that so many of those fears are just coming from that Paleolithic part of our brain that still thinks that saber-toothed tigers are going to kill us if we walk out from our cave. Fear also loves to be around other fearful people. The fearful like to be around the fearful. People who are fearful, you notice you see them a lot of groups of older people will sit around in cafes and they just talk about how everything's terrible. They gossip about all the things, all the people who are different, all the people who stand out, they gossip about them. Quite nasty about it, to be honest. They'll sit around and basically poke holes in everything different, unusual, and unknown to them because they figured they got to be old by doing the right thing, by not standing out, by not being the tall poppy. It's safer not to try. It's safer not to be successful because when we get successful, there's always people who want to cut us down. There's always competitors that want to beat us. There's always customers that want to complain about us. So of course, fear loves company. We like to surround ourselves with people who are going to confirm our fears. We'll surround ourselves with people who confirm our biases. Oh, I'm never going to become a business owner because it's just too hard. And I know at least 12 people who tried to have businesses and got nowhere. And then your cheerleaders around you, yeah, you're right. Yeah, I know some people who had a failure too. And when you actually break down conversations like that, those 12 people are actually about one person. All those people who said, oh yeah, I know someone too. Maybe one or two of those people knew someone who may have had an issue with their business. We are gathered with all this data we put together. There's this data that goes around at the moment that says that, that 90% of small businesses fail in their first year. That's not true. It actually does not happen. That is an absolute myth. Now, it might be 50% of businesses will fail within the first 10 years. That's more like it. But this one that goes around and says, oh, the majority of businesses fail in their first year actually doesn't happen. What it's being taken as, the majority of businesses in their first year don't make a profit. Doesn't mean the business doesn't happen or that it somehow collapses. But the majority of small businesses in their first year fail to make a profit. That's the statistic. But the people who love company with their fear will then parrot that and say, oh yeah, but we know that, for instance, everyone's going to fail in their first year in business. It's not failure, because it actually takes a year at least to sort of build a market around you. It takes a year at least for you to understand how cash flow works and to get your pricing right and to move out of a poverty mindset into an abundance mindset and all those things you need to do to get yourself moving. We surround ourselves with people who are going to parrot back our thoughts to us. If you're starting a new business, then what is safe and what is easy and what is the normal way of doing things isn't what drives you. So what we find that big business owners tend to be a little bit kooky. Elon Musk, a little bit weird. All the nerds that own tech companies, they're a little bit odd. And even a lot of the people who we know who own businesses, even family businesses, they don't do the same thing as you do. They don't work for the government like you do. So what they do is they're a bit weird, they're a bit strange, they're a bit odd. Oh, they've got their own business and they never really have time to sort of do anything. And you've got to be comfortable with people thinking that about you. You've got to be comfortable with the idea that people are going to think you're a little bit odd. Now, you may also be surrounded by people who don't do that. They actually make you feel great. They actually celebrate you. They get together and go, look, what can I do to help you? Can I tell people about you? That depends on who you surround yourself with. We tend that misery loves company, fear loves company, but then so does driving success. So does ambition. Ambition loves to be around other ambitious people. A solid goal-oriented drive in someone wants to be around other people who are goal-oriented and have a drive about them. So if we're looking to get past those fears, how do we do it? It's 4 ways. The first way is to embrace the fact that fear exists. Okay, I know this is fear. I get it. I'm afraid. I'm just trying to protect me. There is a risk in what I'm doing. I felt fear before and I didn't die. I'm still here. So yes, fear, I understand you're here. I understand you're a thing. I understand you're this thing that's going to keep nagging at me all the time and I'm never really going to get over you. Like that ex that you never truly got over, that's fear. But I know you're what you are. And I understand that I'm scared of this. And that fear is just trying to keep me alive. And whilst, yes, there is an absolute risk in what I'm doing, I've actually had things I've done before which are just as risky. And I survived. I got through it. I came out the other end. The second thing is to disidentify yourself from the fear. It's saying, whilst fear is natural and is completely legitimate, I am not fear. This fear is not who I am. It's just a set of beliefs. And I can see this fear playing out. So it's really, it's outside of me. If I can see what fear is doing, then it's not inside me, it's outside of me. Identifying fear removes its power. Once you say, this is fear, this is not me. And quite often when I have thoughts myself, which go into a weird spiral, I have to stop myself and literally say out loud, say, this is not who I am. This is not me. I don't know where this is coming from, but it's not from me. Now, what we do know is it does come from inside us. It comes from that Neolithic, Paleolithic, caveman kind of thinking. But that fear isn't you. In a modern, enlightened world like we have right now, we know that fear is not a real tangible thing. It causes real tangible results, but it's not who you are. It's an act. It's something that projects out, but it's not who you are. So that's the second thing. I am not fear, and I embrace fear, but I'm not fear. Then you ask, what is the worst case scenario? What's the worst possible thing that can happen as a result of this fear that I have? This fear of starting a business, this fear of taking a step into this business. Is it death? Because I'm not going to die. Is it loss of status? Well, that might happen. You know, in my family, when I failed my first business, I had everyone who I knew in my family come to me and say, "Oh, look, you really were, far better as an employee than a business owner." Yeah, they all came to me with all this lovely stuff, which was like, "Damn you, I'm going to go and succeed despite you all," and I did. I did go and succeed after that, just despite them, because I didn't want them to be right. Is it a loss of money and control in the case of money? Well, yeah, if your business fails, if that thing you do fails, you will lose money. You may lose control of certain things. I lost a car. I had to move. I was evicted from a house. But did I die? No. I had a couple of weeks where I just allowed myself to mourn that and to feel like an idiot and to hide away from the world. And then when I emerged from that again, I said, all right, now I know what I did wrong. I'm ready to do it right this time, and started with no money and built a new business. Is it a loss of reputation? Because honestly, reputations are very fleeting. Just ask any celebrity, any music star from the last 50 years who was a one-hit wonder, was in one movie and never seen again. Success and reputation are so fleeting. They're here today, gone tomorrow. Just because someone sees you fail publicly now does not mean that they necessarily will remember you or the fact that you failed in 10 years' time. That loss of reputation, while reputation may seem like it's everything, once you lose that reputation, you have the chance to rebuild, to redefine yourself, to start again. And starting again may seem hard because you put so much work into what you're doing, but it's seriously not the worst case scenario. I've started again 5 times after that first business failed, and then having subsequent challenges with businesses, pivots to different ideas. I'm still here. I'm still kicking. Is that really so bad? Is it really so bad that you suffer a little bit of reputation loss? Sure, for the first week or two, people will talk about you, but their attention span is so small. They're going to lose interest because there's something else that's going to pop up there. And the kind of people who gossip, the kind of people who you think, care so much about your reputation, they only care about it because it's the news in front of them right now. It's not the news in front of them in 2 weeks' time. It's amazing how fast a reputation can come back. It's amazing. Look at Donald Trump, bankrupt 4 times. He has had so many charges brought against him, and yet still he steps forward. And he's awful. He's an awful human being, but he's still able to step up. The worst case scenario for him, I'll lose everything. That's all right. I'll start again. And he's done that 5 times. So it is possible to do that. Are you going to die? And then do a reality check. What is the worst that will happen if I fail? What are the real chances of me not failing? What proof did I have that it's going to fail? And people with that proof will always go back to that assumption that all these small businesses fail in their first year. And it's just not true. That's not proof. Oh, these other people who did this, they failed. That's not proof. That's proof that they failed, not proof that you will. What are the real chances of you failing? What are the real chances of you succeeding? Don't just look at what the worst is. A reality check looks at both things. It looks at what's the worst that can happen and what's the best that could happen. Because life generally happens in the middle of those things. It happens between the worst and the best. It doesn't usually go those extremes. So in that spectrum between the worst that could happen and the best could happen, can I actually live in that spectrum somewhere? Probably can. I'm pretty sure I can, in fact. Even if the worst happens, I'm still going to be alive at the end of it. Just because you see people who are successful, appear successful, doesn't mean that they don't have fear. They aren't fearless. They've just learned over a lot of bruises and a lot of breaks and a lot of punches and a lot of failures and a lot of up and a lot of down, a lot of in and out. They've learned how to work with that fear. They haven't had to have that fear run them. They've learned how to, number one, harness it. Number two, they've learned how to disidentify themselves from it. Number three, they've learned how to look at the reality. They don't have a lack of fear. They just learn how to work with that fear. The fear of failure then happens to be a fear that will stop us trying to start something new, trying to start a new business, trying to start a new product, a new venture, a new holiday destination, a new house, a new place to live, a new car. That fear of failure will never, ever stop bugging you. It will always come up. But it is just data. It's just something from your past saying, I've failed before, therefore it's incredibly likely that I'll fail again. That's not the truth. That situation last time had nothing to do with this situation now. In fact, you don't just have the data of fear, you've got the data of experience now to back you up. You're far less likely to fail this time because you learned from last time. So that data that's telling you don't do it because you failed before is actually a liar, because you have so much better place to succeed now because you did fail. Think about the person who just found $100 on the street. They pick it up and they go, awesome, woohoo, off to Coles to buy some stuff, off to pay a bill, off to treat myself at the pub. There's many things you could do with that $100. But the joy of finding that $100 is gone so quickly. As soon as you spent that and you've had the fruits of that success of that $100, the joy immediately leaves and it's gone and it's so quickly forgotten. But if you're the person who lost that $100 for one of any countless reasons, you dropped that $100. For you, that failure is going to play over in your head again and again and yet again, because you'll beat yourself up for being that idiot that dropped the $100 note. Then every time you'll go to buy something, you'll remember how that $100 note would have made that purchase much easier. Every time you turn around, when you go through a period of time where you've got a lack of money, geez, if I hadn't have lost that $100, I could have had that right now and been able to spend it. Now, you and I both know that's absolutely irrational. You would have long spent it by now. But our blame and name and shame part of our brain likes to say, nah, you're an idiot. You lost it. You're a failure. You're a complete waste of time and an oxygen thief because you lost that $100. That's why we have that fear of failure, that fear of losing something, because we obsess about loss, but we don't celebrate success to quite the same level. Whilst we'll take weeks or months to get over a loss, sometimes years, we generally accept the success very quickly and then we move on because we have a greater fear of failure than we have a hope for success. I'll say that again. We live with a greater fear of failure than what we do with the hope for a potential success. Isn't that sad? That's an evolutionary thing. It helps keep us alive. It helps keep us on our toes, helps keep us away from those saber-toothed tigers. But it's certainly not helping our businesses. It's certainly not helping those new things we want to try and do. And the same thing happens with that fear of success. Exactly the same thing. We fear success for the same reason, because we fear the worst outcomes far more than we anticipate the good outcomes. Some of us have what we call a success bias, or perhaps a confirmation bias, or even better, we have a bit of an echo chamber going on in our own head that says, oh, it cannot go wrong. Optimism bias is what's actually called. And that optimism bias then, sometimes with some of us, we just keep going anyway. The fear of success or the fear of failure, the fear of change, those things don't exist to us. All we have is an assumption that at some point we're going to succeed, so we might as well just keep going, even though it hurts right now. I'm one of those people who've developed an optimism bias as a result of moving past my fear of change, success, and failure. The fear of success often is a fear of change, that we go from being someone who absolutely blends in to eventually becoming someone that stands out. We go from being someone that thinks and acts and feels and goes about life in the same way as everybody else around them to somebody who has to do something different. I can't take these public holidays off because I have to work. I can't buy the car that I want to buy because I've got to let that money go into other places. Oh, I have to consider the tax repercussions of this capital investment I've made in my premises, as opposed to, yeah, I'm just going to buy a new house and negative gear it and make some money. That fear of success usually is accompanied by a fear of standing out or being seen as different. about being pointed out, the tall poppy syndrome, horrible thing that happens in this country. And it's so rampant. It's what stops so many people from wanting to succeed. It's at the point where we're having less and less and less and less sporting success in Australia because people don't want to stand out. I remember going through school as an exceptional athlete. I was very, very good at it. I was very good at running, swimming, triathlon, everything. Everything I put my hand to in sport, I succeeded at. And the one thing that stopped me in the end was, firstly, that I had to either embrace the fact that people expected things from me and I didn't like that as a teenager, or I had to embrace the fact that I was always going to be picked on, bullied, and somehow pointed out. And I just couldn't live with that. I couldn't live with having to have all of that attention, all that expectation. I just went, nah, that's not me. I'm not going to do that. So yeah, I'm just going to move on and try something else. And I went to uni and did something else. The fear of change, on the other hand, whilst it still has all the same trademarks as the fear of failure and the fear of success, it's all about us not being really too sure whether we can handle that change. It's not having confidence or not backing yourself to go, no, it's a change. It's fine. I'll be right. I'll be able to do this. I've prepared for this. I've got flexibility in my business or in my life that's going to help me to succeed at this. Fear of change is a fear of the unknown, because we're going into a place in our business or in the economy or in a relationship that we don't know. And evolutionarily, that's a terrible mess up of that word, but in an evolutionary sense, that fear of the unknown is completely understandable. Because if we go into that place we don't know who will be there who wants to kill us. If we walk in that valley where we normally don't go, we don't know what saber-toothed tigers might jump out and kill us. The unknown was a scary place. We hung around very small places right up until pretty much the 20th century. We were not in a position to go far. In fact, the majority of the world's people didn't travel more than about 20 miles from their home where they were born in their lifetime until the Industrial Revolution brought people from the country into the city. The amount of people we had in our circle was around about 50 to 60 people who we knew in a village. And then when cities formed, we suddenly had an explosion of the amount of people we knew. But it made us very afraid. We became very afraid of our neighbors. We don't talk to our neighbors because they're unknown. We don't know how they'll react. We don't really know if they're nice people, and the risk of them not being nice people and us letting them know that we are nice means we're going to be out of weakness and they're going to take advantage of us. We don't know that. There's no way we could know that. But it's safer to not stand out. Remember, it's safer to just blend in. It's safer to be under the radar. That's the trouble with all this. It holds you back as a business owner. It holds you back as someone who wants to succeed. It holds you back as a person who wants to do more of their life than just simply sit in an office in a semi-comfortable ergonomic chair with the air conditioning running and doing the same thing day in, day out. I certainly don't want to live that way. I'm pretty sure you don't either.